because of the solid foundation that our president poured of less taxes, less regulation, more American energy, free and fair trade in our first 3 years. The American comeback has begun, and we've already added 8 million jobs back to the American economy. We're opening up America again, and we're opening up America's schools again.
Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia, it's great to have you back, sir. Welcome.
Kelly, thank you. Good to be with you.
So are you surprised by, it's interesting because I think you were among the folks who said we could be under 10% on the unemployment rate by the end of the year at a time a few months ago when that seemed insane. We could be below that point next month.
Yeah, exactly right, Kelly. I was projecting a couple months ago that I believed we could get below 10% unemployment by the end of the year. That was perceived as optimistic, aggressive. But we're, more or less there right now. So this is a very encouraging report on the heels of excellent reports for May and June as well. We're ahead of where virtually anybody expected us to be. And as you noted, the July jobs report included a period where 3 of our largest states, California, Texas, Florida, were having to put in place some restrictions because there were rising cases and hospitalizations. So we were confronting some headwinds. But nonetheless, we posted these very good numbers. But let me quickly add, we have work to do still. There are still too many Americans out of work. We want to support them. We want to get them back to work.
There is one major new headwind, and it's the expiration of those jobless benefits. I mean, this is several $100 billion worth of money that was going into the economy that no longer is. We don't know yet what the next bill will include. Do you have any early sense of the impact that's had on the labor market and the economy?
Well, the $600 benefit was something that Congress did back in March with the president as we were closing the economy. Of course, we're in a different place now. It was agreed at the time to have that expire at the end of July. The Republicans, as you know, Kelly, actually have been trying to keep that benefit in place. It tried to have it in place this week while negotiations continued. The Democrats declined to leave it in place for this week, stopped a motion that would have kept it in place while negotiations were ongoing. I think long term, as important as it was to have a very substantial benefit when the economy was closed, I think with the economy opening the way it is, that number is too high. In Massachusetts, on unemployment with a $600 a week benefit, you're getting $75,000 a year on an annualized basis. In Oregon, it came out to $65,000 a year on an annualized basis. So we'd like to see more stimulus. We don't think that benefit over a long period of time is the right way to deliver it.
Yeah, it's a generous benefit, but again, it was intended to be. And we're in this odd period now where the spread of COVID has been worse this summer than anybody thought. But at the same time, the economy has more momentum than even a couple of weeks ago we might have imagined. I want to ask you about the composition of the labor market, the fact that the unemployment rate for blacks is about 14%, 14.5%, for Hispanics, 13%. There's been a lot more focus lately on this employment gap and on the wage gap. We have congressmen calling for it to be added to the Fed's mandate to narrow this. We have Joe Biden talking about making this an important part of the Fed's accountability in the future. What do you think should and can be done to narrow these gaps?
Well, Kelly, I want to underscore how inclusive President Trump's economy was through February when the virus came. It's not just that we had an extraordinary number of jobs being created, 7 million since he took office, or unemployment that was at a 50-year low. It was also an economy where we saw all-time lows in unemployment for African Americans, Hispanics, and we saw rising wages for particularly for those at the lower end of the wage scale. So that was an economy that was delivering incredibly well for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and we're going to get back there. That is the goal. The same policies that delivered that of a light tax burden, eliminating unnecessary regulations. That's what's going to help those populations more than any other thing. Yes, the African American unemployment number did come down 0.8%, which is a good reduction. But there's work to do on that front too. I think a lot of those workers were among the last hired, and sometimes the last brought in are among the first that unfortunately get laid off. But we do see people coming back to work now in record numbers, and I think that number is going to continue to go down, along with the unemployment rate for other populations.
The final question, and it's more on the inflation side. Let's talk about wages more broadly. What do we see in this report? And you guys also do the CPI, the PPI reports. Those levels have been extraordinarily low lately. I mean, there's certainly no inflation pressures right now, but on the wage side of things, are we seeing any evidence that there might be some shortages or labor pressures developing? As odd as it seems to ask at a time with so much unemployment, what signals do we have there?
It's a good question, though, because the economy is so dynamic right now. Changes that might have played out over a longer period of time are happening in some cases in a more compressed period. The numbers that we've put out would indicate that wages are higher now than they were a few months ago, Kelly, as you know. But that's just a reflection, I think, of the composition of the labor force, that it was lower wage jobs that were lost. That's why that $600 a week benefit ends up being a bit of a distortion. Because it's the lower wage jobs that ended up being lost. I don't think we're seeing any signs at this point of inflation on the wage side.
Breaking news.
All right, we do have breaking news. The Labor Department just released the jobs report for the month of July. CNN chief business correspondent Christine Romans with the breaking details. Romans, what do you see?
John, just quickly here, 1.8 million jobs added in July, a little better than expected here. And the unemployment rate down to 10.2% from a number in the 11% range. That is good news.
The U.S. added about 1.8 million jobs in July. The unemployment rate fell to 10.2%. NBC News business and technology correspondent Jo Ling Kent joins me now. Joe, let's just start with the positive here. Where did we see job gains in July?
We saw job gains in healthcare, in retail, in government services, professional business services. So, you did see some increases. The good news is that overall unemployment rate continues to tick down. That is what the president is calling great. He was touting the jobs reports number this morning. But if you take a closer look inside the meat of the jobs report, and I always go through all of the spreadsheets and tables that are linked in that Department of Labor information, you do see.
I know you do.
I think it's so important because when you go in and you dig for the details, you see what happens with unemployment rates for different groups of people. And so take a look at women. You see women getting hit harder than men when it comes to unemployment. You also see communities of color. Black Americans, unemployment is 15%, 14.6%. Hispanic and Latino unemployment, 12.9%. Asian unemployment, 12%. So most of these numbers are getting better, right? That's the good sign. But the real question here is the pace of recovery, especially as we stand here in an election year. A lot of people were hoping for an immediate bounce back with all of the reopenings. But of course, with so many states surging in their cases and the reevaluation of where we are right now in terms of positive COVID cases and fatalities, it's really being reflected in this jobs report. And then you tick back to yesterday and you see over 31 million people are currently collecting unemployment. And so even though the jobless claims are going down as of last week, you still have a massive number of people who need help to pay the bills and to find a new job.
Joe, are we still seeing particular industries, particular groups really just having a harder time than other folks getting back on their feet? I know we've talked so much about the hits the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry have taken.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where you see a bulk of the issues here, because even if you are, say, in a state where you've had some reopening, a lot of that is at a limited basis. And so those numbers continue to be very weak. But that snapback that we've been looking for, or that economists really have been hoping for, just really isn't happening right now. And I'm just looking at my notes here, looking back to last week, Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he's saying, this has been a reversal of economic fortune for so many people and creates great uncertainty about the future. So we still have a lot of furloughs and layoffs on the horizon. We know about the airlines that are bracing for what will happen after their bailout deadline is expiring this fall. So as I look at the whole picture, you see food prices rising as well. So this is not a simple story to tell, and this recovery is certainly slower than what so many have been hoping for.
Joe, let me ask you this. In July, people were still getting that weekly $600 unemployment bonus. We have been talking about that so much. That is gone now until Congress figures out a solution. How is that complicating the economic recovery and making it tough for people to get back on their feet now that we're in August?
Well, think about it. Consumer spending really drives the economy, right? That's what is putting most people to work. You have consumer spending overall dropping. And then when you lose that $600 a week, that's only going to hurt people's ability to spend. Then you couple that with the public health realities. People are much more unwilling to go out and patronize restaurants, even if they're reopening. So maybe it's not just about spending there. It's also about your public health concerns. And so you have a double whammy in that one category alone. And then you also look at the school reopening situation as well, and that plays into this entire economic picture. So it's a complicated one to look at, but when you think about the future, I can't help but think about the retail situation going into the holiday season. Right now is when companies are starting to figure out their holiday plans. They're already saying a lot of stores are closing on Thanksgiving. That includes Target, Best Buy, and Walmart. So yeah, closing on Thanksgiving this year may not seem like a big deal, but it's a signal of what they expect in terms of spending. Because if you're not open on Thanksgiving, yes, your online platforms are open. You can get all the great deals online, maybe shop on Black Friday. But the expectations the companies are setting, to me, indicates that they are setting a low expectation for the holiday season. And that's where a lot of the economy gets its support. That's the engine of our economy as we head into the last 2 quarters of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, we got that data from the New York Fed yesterday that on the surface sounded like good news, right? People were paying down debt. That's a great sign, but they were doing it likely because they're panicked, right? And if you're paying down debt, you're not spending, and that could really slow things down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at debt, most people are paying down debt because they're looking at that high interest rate, whether it's a credit card or a car payment or something else. And so you want to minimize the amount of extra money that you're losing. And so when you also look at food and you look at your average grocery bill is going to be rising 6% compared to last year, and you see meat and poultry and eggs rising double digits when it comes to percentage pricing. I know you're doing your groceries. I feel it every single day, and we're fortunate enough to have jobs. So when you think about the unemployed people out there who are trying to pinch every penny, it's extremely dire for so many people.
Yeah, a lot of people really, really struggling to make ends meet with things getting so expensive. Joe, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
we'll see you next week.
You too. See you next week.